Hey, this is Insect here, and today is gonna be a little bit of a change up in as far as the format is concerned because I had I had run out of time, and the sun has totally gone down now. It's totally dark, and so I had to use voice recording instead of the usual way, i.e., showing my face. So we're going to be just doing a voice recording, and I just put something in the background, probably a picture or something. Um, Otherwise, nothing new. Now, in the previous video, I'm in the woods, totally dark. There's a homeless encampment somewhere behind me, so you know, only a lunatic would be doing this, because who knows if they take kindly to it. But at least I don't have a flashlight. I thought about using a flashlight, but that didn't even work. Just too dark. I have to wake up earlier to make a video, basically. But yeah, this is gonna be, yesterday not yesterday, but in the previous video, I promised to read you a poem I had written, and that plan also got soiled. Didn't come through. Didn't come through because the video I made, I thought it would turn out different than the way it did turn out. So it didn't really work out walking around. I feel best when I'm sitting in the woods alone, and I'm not walking around people. And I was just very depressed, and yeah, it was just a bad day, very bad day. But I'm better now, so I'm gonna read you that poem I'd written just because. And then we'll get into the other subjects. I have to figure this out. How to make it smaller. Great, I have no idea. I think I have an inkling of an idea. You have to... Nope, I don't know. Well, alright, I figured it out. So here goes the poem. It's entitled... You can just skip this if you don't care about it. It will take maybe 2 or 3 minutes to read. But it's got December 4th, only because I wrote it on that date. And so I'm gonna read it. December 4th. I'm supposed to sleep 4:31 in the AM. I have thought many a time to go to sleep for good. And as I slip seamlessly into melancholy, tears come to my eyes. Again, the same day, the same night. One naturally produces the next. It is cold, cold as the winter has fallen through. Each year passes a harsher sentence. Technology progresses. I don't progress. Everything runs by me. I am made a spectator. Nobody would bet on me. I don't have a horse in this race. I sometimes think that I have achieved something, but when I take a good look at myself, I realize just how little it means, just how tiny a contribution I've made to this world I hate. It's in my blood is in it. Is it not in the nature of truth to whoosh by the sycamore tree? Is it not in the nature of pain to grow at an exponential rate? What is there to do? 24 years is 24 years. So many years of pain. Am I not one tough SOB? How can I feel like such a coward, caught in every mistake? Oh God, listen. If you're not God, that will do too. I'm trying to write a good line. I can't, however, do what I once promised. A promise is a mistake lying in wait. Words ask to be misspelled, misspoken, unspoken, ill-spoken. When are you speaking just right? Are we not just a giant mistake? Even when we are given something sweet, a peach, dough, honey, we say, not good enough. Process it some more. And when we do eat it, we want more, or get a headache or a stomach bug. Or, if we are women, we pose with it. Women, I suppose, play with their food before throwing it away. Men don't bother with the playing bit. They like to rape, to take advantage of, neatly, quickly. In this way, they are much more merciful than their female counterparts, their partners in crime. Oh, I wish, as the cold rushes through me, sweeping up my skin, running up my hairs, that I had something enlightening to say. I wish I could carry like a bee the produce from A to B. I want to show up like Santa Claus at so many doors and chimneys and leave a piece of myself there. I want to catch with a giant hand those who fall. I want to be mistress to the world, a street sweeper working for $1.99. But my worthless flesh is not up for sale. Something worthless, after all, does not go for anything. I am therefore free. Visit me. I am like the weeds that grow between bricks. Nobody considers me, and that's why I'm free. So, that's the poem. And in case you are interested in my poems for some reason, uh, I I have shared some PDFs on my About Me page, and also on my community tab, which there's a I've shared my what I call my philosophy thesis, which is basically just a mix of my fiction and nonfiction, kind of a thesis. It combines fiction and nonfiction elements to produce a bunch of ideas, many of which you have seen on this channel and heard on this channel, but many of which you haven't. And then I also have a poetry collection called it's called Only in the Gutter. So the philosophy thesis is called Notes of a Modern Jester, and the poetry collection is called All in the Gutter, which is which the title is a reference itself to my web novel. One of the MC says that we're all in the gutter, ma'am. Some of us are just covered in more shit than the rest. And so I also have my web novel linked, but it's pretty incomplete. It's not my best, but it's dear to me. I have a lot of ideas. I might finish it at some point. But anyway, that's just a little plug. For our sake, we're just gonna continue talking about stuff. I have written down a bunch of notes again, as I usually do. Not just the poem. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that have come up in terms of my thought process. And so one thing that I've been thinking about lately is just death, just dying, mortality. because yeah, that just was when in my face. And I've thought about this. I sort of been thinking about this thought experiment of Death Note. That I don't know if you know this anime. Uh, it's called Death Note, and it's one of the most popular anime of all time. And I think it has a really interesting premise, and I don't see people talking about it in the kind of antinatalist, pessimist communities. Even though it's such an interesting thought experiment because it's very similar to the big red button thought experiment. Is would you press the big red button to destroy the world because it's so awful? And the Death Note anime asks a similar question, but on a smaller scale, right? So it, you know, I explained the premise. So basically, there are these gods that are sort of hanging out in some sort of I don't know if it's a hell or it's some kind of a lounge for these gods to hang out, but there's nothing to do in this lounge. I think all the gods that are kind of evil gods, and they've been sort of condemned to this lounge, this kind of watershed hells, and so they have nothing to do. But because they're gods, they do have control over certain worlds and universes. And so one of these gods is the god of death. And in Japanese, that's called the Shinigami, I think. Shinigami or Shinagami, I don't remember. But it's called it means the god of death. I think it's Shinigami. And so this god, gets bored, and he decides to drop a death note, a little notebook, in the human world. And the point of this notebook is that the person who picks it up can write names in the notebook. And the person that the name refers to will die, I think in 30 seconds after the name has been written. So one day, he drops the notebook in the human world, and then this student, in anime, it's very typical. It's a trope that, the MC is sitting by the window in a class. And so because he's sitting by the window in class, he spots the notebook dropping on the floor. Because, and this was not engineered by the god. It was a complete coincidence, I think. He doesn't give a damn. He doesn't see him as special. He sees himself as special, but that's another can of worms. The point is that this guy, this boy, whose name is Light, spots the notebook. So he waits until class is let out, obviously, and then he goes out at recess or whatever, and then he picks it up. Or when school ends, he picks it up. And then sorry. And then so he goes home, and then the Shinigami appears to him in his room, and he sort of explains the rules of the Death Note, what you can do with it, what you can't do with it. I don't remember exactly, but there are sort of like problems like, okay, what happens if it gets full? Do you get a new one? I don't know. I don't remember. But that's not really the point. The point is that the thought experiment, basically, the story sets out, which I think it's originally a manga, and then it was adapted into anime. In all fairness, it was not an anime original. It was written by some dude and illustrated by some other dude, but I don't remember. Anyway, and so the thought experiment that the anime basically posits is: would you be Light? Would you be the kid who decides it's a good idea to to start writing names, because Light does decide that it's a good idea. So he starts uh, punishing criminals, or what he considers punishing criminals. So he finds a sexual criminal who abuses a woman, and he kills him. Gets hit by a truck or whatever, and then he kills people in prison. And so he becomes kind of a megalomaniac. And that's another point. And that's one point that the anime raises, I suppose, is that you do have this right to. Sorry, I'm distracted by lights. Uh, do you have the right to play God? And I think that's an interesting thought experiment, because I've been using it. I've been thinking about this a lot. That if I had the Death Note, yes, I would write names. I think I've come to the point where it would be really difficult to deal with the consequences of that. But because I'm kind of a coward, I would be scared shitless of the ramifications of being Light. But I just feel like the world does have a bunch of people that it would be better without. That you could just look for names forever. I mean, you could write probably like 40 million. You could probably write a billion names, and you would and it would be all deserved, because most of all those people are assholes, and they don't contribute anything that that knocks out their negative contributions. Or if you don't want to be that, yeah, if you don't want to be that procrastinating about it, then at least you could probably still get like 100 million or something. I mean, there's so many assholes on the planet, so many I think more than we like to think, just so many bullies and cheaters and liars and manipulators and sexual abusers. um you can just go on with the racists, fascists. I mean, people who are just violent for no reason. You can just go on forever and never. Um, and if you really want to be extreme, okay, so are you vegan? I'm not, so I would be on somebody's list, and that's another problem, is that who gets to decide? And I mean, my answer is that there is essentially no perfect way of producing an algorithm that would decide. I think it's essentially up to us. It's pragmatic. That it's only intelligent people basically just have to decide what we value, and there's nothing else there. There's nothing else there. It's just not obvious. But I guess the problem that I want to raise is would you personally write in the Death Note? And I guess the the variable that the conflicting variable that goes into this, the confounding variable that goes into this, is your personality. That what if we just sort of knock out your personality, and we don't consider, oh, what is, but I'm too scared to do it. What if my girlfriend breaks up with me, or my parents, kick me out or whatever because I'm Light? It's like, forget about this stuff. What if, you just somehow had the balls to do it, and it was just purely up to a moral decision or an ethical decision? Would you do it then? If you could just put everything else aside. And I think you would have to. I mean, you would have to be a killer. And that's interesting because it's illegal. I mean, being a killer is illegal. And here's what we get in. Here's when where we get into the the uncomfortable waters, because you know you cannot be found to, in the eyes of society, you cannot ever be found to advocate for violence. So you cannot say, yes, I think murder actually is a good idea. You can't say that, but you know, but I think it's pretty obvious that murder isn't always wrong. That whatever logic you go by, that there are so many people that the world would be better off without. And we've been fed all these illusions all our lives that we slowly have to erase from the blackboard, and write new stuff in there, because it's just on there, because it's just so everything we've been taught is basically a lie. Like murder is always wrong. I mean, it's just such bullshit. I mean, you just know that if I presented to you the death note, you would start writing. And if you would not, then you should be faced with the consequences of that. You need to understand that if you don't kill bad people, then they're gonna keep doing bad things, and that's gonna rest on your soul. Right? So if you can somehow, I mean, Light didn't have. I don't think Light had a special knowledge of people, so that would be a difficulty. But if you could somehow have, if the Shinigami also gave you like some kind of telepathic knowledge of just looking at a person and just sort of knowing what they're gonna do, like or just looking at the pattern of the behavior. Like, let's just take I don't know, a kid who is a violent bully, and again, that's another very underrated problem in the world, is that how much bullying actually goes on. I think it's an insane number. I think almost everybody is bullied at some point, and it's just quite incredible how underappreciated the problem is. But anyway, the digression aside, the point is that suppose that I can look at this kid and I can use probability or statistics to mathematically figure out via some algorithm that the kid has like an 85% chance of doing it again, of knocking somebody not knocking somebody's teeth out, beating them up, just causing them a lot of trauma that they will have to suffer for the rest of their life. And all I have to do to stop that from happening is to write his name down, and then he dies in 30 seconds. Do I do it? Do I not do it? Well, if I don't do it, then I could be causing another death, because the child will, the bullied child will commit suicide, perhaps. A lot of people who get bullied end up dying of suicide. They can't take it anymore. I mean, it creates unspeakable trauma. I mean, people who are not traumatized don't know the extent to which trauma extends. It's you can't even, you sit down and you just feel like the walls are you just feel like somebody's about to stab you in the neck. I mean, it's living with trauma is extremely painful. It's extremely molesting. It's extremely punishing. So you don't underappreciate the grading. You don't underappreciate the grading of it. The grading nature of it. So do you kill him or not? I mean, if those are the two choices that you're given, jot the name down or don't jot the name down. If you do, he lives. If you don't, he lives. And then he bullies the kid, and the other kid might commit suicide, or he might live with trauma for the rest of his life. Possibly. Well, let's just say that's the case. Or you do it, and the kid dies, and the other kid doesn't. The other kid is, more or less it's fine after that. It's like, did you do a good thing or a bad thing? Like, these are really difficult philosophical questions, and I don't really know what the answer is, other than, yeah, if you had the power, you would have to start writing names. And maybe, this is an edge case. This is a maybe this case about the child is it's very difficult to, it's an undecidable. But what about dictators, or rapists, or people who are just obviously very bad? I mean, you would just have to kill them, right? And yet it's illegal to do it. And so, I mean, one reason why this is relevant, that I wanted to bring this up, is that there was this a couple of days ago, the CEO of a healthcare provider company in the U.S. Got assassinated, got shot, and people have been talking about it. So I think I actually have the the kind of headline here. So let me just read some of that, just to catch you up to speed. Okay, here it goes. Yeah, so this is from New York Times. I'm quoting now. A furious manhunt was underway in Manhattan after the head of one of the nation's largest health insurers, United Healthcare, was gunned down on Wednesday morning in what the police called a brazen targeted attack. A gunman lay in wait for the executive outside a hotel in Midtown, the heart of the city's business and tourist districts, and opened fire before fleeing into Central Park, according to the investigators. Yeah, so your people have been talking about this murderer, this assassin, and isn't he in a way kind of like Light Yagami? Isn't he light? That he decided that it's some kind of message to the healthcare system in the U.S., which is, as far as I know, very ineffective. In terms of the bang is not worth your buck. In the U.S. system, it's too expensive for too little gain. That it should be socialized, and there was Obamacare and all that kind of stuff, and Trump obviously wants to shut it down, and neoliberalism, blah blah blah. So maybe this murder was probably, I guess, politically motivated. That this guy was wanting to send a message to Trump and the Trump administration that will be that will be incumbent, that fuck you, we are tired of these overpriced providers, overpriced insurance. We want socialized healthcare, and we're tired of it. So maybe that was the reason, or that the healthcare doesn't cover this, it doesn't cover that. That's a little bit alien to me, because I live in the EU. I live in Europe. So for us, if you can't pay private, you can get social healthcare, and if you have to pay for it, it's like, if you have to pay for medicine, it's more or less, like I'm on the psychiatric medication, and they're mostly pretty cheap. Like, you don't you don't lose your shorts. Yeah, so but like, if a person is blind, or deaf or whatever, like, they get amenities from the government. Like, I'm pretty sure if you can't walk, then you're you're given a wheelchair. Like it's not like it's much more socialized here. So it's we don't have all these major healthcare providers that are vying for control here. It's just not the situation where I live, in a post-Soviet country. But I can understand kind of what the situation is over there. That if you don't have a job, then you lose your health care. And here where I live, it's you can pay for it, and it's pretty cheap. Like even if you lose your job, if you pay like I don't know, fucking $40, you'll get your healthcare back. You'll get your socialized healthcare back. And all you have to pay is like $40 or whatever the number is, probably less. So I think it's a kind of light Yagami message that this guy was trying to send by killing this guy. And I wanna kind of talk about personal talk about kind of societal responsibility versus personal responsibility, and we're gonna talk about Mark Fisher and this clash between the left versus the right in terms of who's guilty. But I have to take a break because my back is killing me. So be right back. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you can hear. And why is it showing red? Well, probably because it's a different record. Hold on, let me try something. Yeah, I don't get that. Alright, so we're back. Hopefully everything works. Now I want to read you two quotes from Mark Fisher, because this will be relevant to the topic we're discussing here. Yeah, it has to do with individual responsibility versus societal responsibility. So we can sort of tie the assassin, Death Note, and this all together. So here goes. The media focus was on the excesses of individual bankers and on the government's handling of the crisis, not on the systemic causes of the crisis. This is talking about the bank bailouts. I don't for a moment want to excuse New Labour for its part in such disasters, but it has to be recognized that focus on government, like the focus on immoral individuals, is an act of deflection. So this is Capitalist Realism, page 63, by Mark Fisher. Then another one. It's well past time for the left to cease limiting its ambitions to the establishing of a big state. But being at a distance from the state does not mean either abandoning the state or retreating into private spaces, into the private space of effects and diversity, which Zizek rightly argues is the perfect complement to neoliberalism's domination of the state. It means recognizing that the goal of a genuinely new left should not be to take over the state, but to subordinate the state to the general will. This involves, naturally, resuscitating the very concept of a general will, reviving and modernizing the idea of a public space that is not reducible to an aggregation of individuals and their interests. The methodological individualism of the capitalist realist worldview presupposes the philosophy of Max Stirner as much as that of Adam Smith or Hayek, in that it regards notions such as the public as spooks, phantom abstractions devoid of content. All that is real is the individual and their families. The symptoms of the failures of this worldview are everywhere. In a disintegrated social sphere in which teenagers shooting each other has become commonplace, in which hospitals incubate aggressive superbugs, What is required is that effect be connected to structural cause. Against the postmodernist suspicion of grand narratives, we need to reassert that, far from being isolated, contingent problems, far from being isolated contingent problems, these are all the effects of a single systemic cause, capital, capital with a capital C, actually. We need to begin, as if for the first time, to develop strategies against the capital, again, capital with capital C, which presents itself as ontologically as well as geographically ubiquitous. So IBID page 77. All right, so a lot in there. So I have a problem with all this, because if you know my thinking, I am actually a methodological individualist in the way that he described, because I don't believe that society is real. I think society is an abstraction, the same way that humanity is an abstraction, or family is an abstraction. These are just micro or macro level abstractions that people think are real, but aren't. And so but I don't think that means we have to give up fighting for a cause. We can fight for a cause, but we have to recognize that we're all individuals fighting our own causes, and we use other people to get our advantage. So I think the fact that society doesn't exist, and if you want more on this subject, you can again read my thesis or watch some of my videos on watch my video No Longer Human. You can find the stuff here, but I think the fact that society doesn't exist is actually a liberating idea. That even though it was obviously, if you know the history, it was profited by people like Margaret Thatcher, and maybe before her it was Ayn Rand who also said it. There's no society, and this kind of dovetails well with the neoliberal idea that we're all just atomized individuals, which is now being aggravated by Trump's re-election, that they're gonna gut the government. And there we have to remember Chomsky's dictum that just if you take away decision making from the state, decision making doesn't disappear, it just switches hands. So instead of the government being the swamp, it's gonna be private capital that will be the swamp. So it's today people are no longer looking for solutions, they're looking for alternatives to solutions. And again, these are all things I've developed before in my videos. You're gonna have to just check them out. It's getting too much to reference everything, but I've talked about this stuff before. Anyway, so today people no longer look for solutions, they look for that's the diagnosis, my diagnosis, that people no longer look for solutions, they look for alternatives to solutions. So instead of eating the regular diet, whatever that is, they eat vegan, or they eat keto, or low carb, or whatever the hell. Instead of investing in the stock market, they invest in crypto. Instead of, I don't know, instead of watching TV, they watch Netflix. Everything has to be switched. And we're living in a society and this time and the civilization that destroys everything that it sees around it. That everything has to be ironic. And then even the big companies have to have social media pages where they ironically refer to themselves and use uh, you know new gen lingo. Um, it doesn't allow for any kind of stability. It's a perfect destroyer of stability, and so we don't live in a society that's stable. And you can see that in um, or that the sex has been replaced with masturbation, porn. You no longer have a girlfriend. You have a you have somebody that you pay money to online to give you some attention. You simp. That's another word. Brain rot. Brain rot is actually the word of the year in the from the Oxford dictionary. They're so severe is the problem. But anyway, so the point is that I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way because I don't give a fuck, but not even females are good enough anymore. Like we have the femboys, and it's it's getting harder to even know if you're talking to a female, or you're talking to a male, because you don't even know if they've changed their genders, or it just everything has to be the fundamental ideology of today is that everything stable has to be destroyed. And that's Zizek's Slavoj Žižek's a critique of Judith Butler and gender ideology. That well, why do you think this is radical? Why do you think this is revolutionary? The idea that you can change genders. I mean, changing genders falls perfectly in line with today's ideology that you can be anything, that you can be a fluid subject, that you don't need a stable job. You can be an Uber driver and a TikTok star, an Uber driver by day, OnlyFans star by night. You can constantly reinvent yourself. That's why Bukowski has this poem of invent yourself and then reinvent yourself, which might have been a good idea in his time, but today the tables have flipped, and now it's the exact opposite. Now, to be revolutionary is to be stable, to find a fixed identity, because they try everything because somehow everybody tries to take away your stable identity. And so what's the revolutionary part about it? Nothing. Or my argument that promiscuity, this idea of promiscuity was propagated as a progressive thing, and I never bought it. I mean, why is it progressive to use people as a means to an end to satisfy your pleasures? I don't really get it. So a lot of the stuff that the progressives are doing, I don't really get. And I guess while we're at it, we might as well also address the little bit, just a little bit, the immigration problem. That yes, I mean it's just obvious that we deserve it. I mean, we lay in the bed that we made. The reason why the immigrants are coming and taking over Western countries is because we failed to provide a world where everybody is good where they are. So now Orban and other reactionaries, jingoists are trying now to, oh, but we're gonna send them money, we're gonna ship them money, just as long as they stay where they are. And they say this explicitly. I mean, Orban gave a Nazi speech a while back, referencing the Great Replacement and all that kind of bullshit, and the European race. He actually used those words, and it's very concerning. And fascists are rising, and that's another problem. But I guess I just want to lay down my fundamental, um, my fundamental point about my 5 cents about immigration. Is like, are you pro-immigration or are you anti? And it's like, I feel like a lot of leftists are pretending that this is a good thing. That they're pretending that all these immigrants flooding into the Western countries from different cultures, they're rude. They really don't know how to behave. They don't speak the language. Not all of them, but many of them. And many of them are only here for short periods of time. again, which just neatly falls into the interest of capital. That they're pretty much just here for the money. They're just here to make money. They're not here to enrich themselves in the culture or to have kids or do any of these things that is good for the society. And again, I'm obviously, I'm just speaking in the voice of society for the sake of the argument. I don't actually care. uh, I think society can go fuck itself, but just in terms of the if you look at that from the standpoint of the society, it's probably not a smart idea. But on the other hand, that they don't have enough kids, so they just have to let them in. They have to, or they're just gonna sink with the ship. I'm just saying that personally, I really don't mind if the ship sinks personally, but that's just looking at it from the standpoint of my own society. That my own society, I doubt it benefits. I mean, it benefits in some sense, but I'm just saying that from my own perspective. I guess I can't really get clarity on this because there's so many different viewpoints that you can, use to attack this problem. But I'm just saying that for me, I, I wouldn't care if society just died. If the low birth rates just produced, my society's death. I don't care. I just don't give a shit. Um, B, I don't think the immigrants are really gonna. I don't think there's any evidence they are properly being trained, being sublimated into the system. I think there's severe problems. Many of them are, again, they're rude. They don't know how to behave. Some of them can. The fact that it's just never gonna be a good. The fact that they're here for a quick buck, insofar as they are, is just not a good idea for the country because they're not going to have any reason. They're not going to have any investment in the future of the country. So, and again, I can't sit here and be honest with you and say, oh, I think it's just wonderful that all these people are from these different cultures are here, so that I have to be more on my guard in case they, because it does happen. Like, again, I personally have two anecdotes. I saw two immigrants, or one of them who stole, or maybe it was he just didn't know. Like, I don't even know if he knew he was supposed to pay. Like, the guy just walked out without paying, and then he sort of, I don't know. It was really strange. And then there was that guy was a brown guy, probably from the Middle East, and then the other guy was Korean. So in case you want to like charge me with some racism, no, it doesn't have to be brown or black. It can be Asian. That Koreans are extremely misogynistic. If you know anything about Korea, it's a very toxic culture, extremely toxic culture, and it's very misogynistic. So I saw a Korean guy, obviously a Korean immigrant, obviously didn't speak a lick of Hungarian or English, probably. Um, or at least he didn't make it known to me that he did. And this guy was basically bothering a woman. It seemed to me that he was sexually harassing her, and I had to step in. I really did step in. I had to do it. I had to like kind of push him back, and then he easily obeyed because I was a lot bigger than him. And he said, I don't know what he said because he was speaking Korean, but he easily obeyed my order. He understood what I was doing, and he backed off. And so it's like that, and then they sort of give you dirty looks sometimes, like they walk by you and then they stare at you, and this and these the kind of these immigrants. It really has to be said that they're not sending their best. And that's just a fact, because obviously those who are doing well in their own countries have no need to immigrate. The ones who immigrate are usually the bottom of the society, the ones that you really don't want. So it's really difficult for me to be honest and say, well, I just think that's a wonderful idea, when I just don't see it. The only argument that you can make is the birth rate argument. I think that we need them because they don't have enough kids. But if that's the best argument you can make, then you're really in trouble. And that's why I've heard leftists make a different argument that like Wash, he would say that Wash the streamer, he would say that, well, the economic argument is not my primary argument. That even though the immigrants help our economy, which I suppose they do, I don't know. I just think they help the economy in terms of, they just add labor value, like because we don't have enough kids. So it's probably true, but he would make the argument that it's because I'm basically, it's because I'm a leftist. I have communist beliefs, so I don't believe in borders. That I don't think you should be artificially deprived of moving between borders, between countries. And that was his primary argument. But when you think about it, it's a pretty empty argument. Like, I think if somebody pushes somebody pushes you against the wall and presses you, and you have to honestly answer, do you think the influx of these immigrants is a good idea or not? Does it do more harm than good? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't do more harm than good. But I don't know. For me, just to just pretend that. And again, this is a point that Zizek makes, who's a leftist, that a lot of leftists are too afraid to make these points. But he's a leftist, and he says, like, get real. I mean, immigrants and refugees are not necessarily nice people. They come from tough backgrounds, and and it's racist precisely to pretend that they aren't that they aren't sometimes dangerous. And I don't know. I just I guess I just I had to like clear my head about this subject, because sometimes I think about a subject and I just don't really know what I think. So I'm still not decided on the issue, but on some fundamental level, it seems to me kind of stupid to to allow a bunch of people into your country that come from a completely different culture, that don't really respect your culture, that are just here to make a quick buck, that don't really have the interest of the country in mind, because they're not going to keep living here. If you're not going to keep living here, you don't have much of a reason to make it, to want it to be better, because you're going to leave anyway. And that's partially the problem of the host countries, because in my country, immigrants can only be here for a certain period of time. There's a term limit. I think they can be here for 2 years and then extended by 1 year, and then I think they have to go back. So that's just a stupid decision. If because if they were here long term, then they would have an interest in the country. Like, if you're here for 10 years, then you want to make the country better for those 10 years. If you're here for 2 or 3 years, you sort of don't give a shit, because it's almost like I'm not gonna say vacation, but it's like it's just, you just don't really care about the country, that because you're just here for but a short while, So I guess I'm just I'm not decided on the issue, is what I'm trying to say. I feel like some issues just require multiple viewpoints, and they're all correct, like the Ukraine war, or that it depends on which viewpoint you use to approach the subject. That if you approach it from a nationalist standpoint, then yes, I mean, fighting the enemy is the best thing you can do. But if you're a that's easier said than done. If you're a young Ukrainian guy and you don't want to throw your life away for some stupid war that you don't even care about, then yeah, the best thing to do is to fuck off and not protect your country at all, right? If you're Russian, then you can understand, okay, maybe NATO was pushing too much. Like, the different viewpoints that you can, but then again, it seems to me that Putin is basically just using that as an excuse at this point. That he's using NATO and NATO's attack as a kind of as a kind of excuse to play, irredentism, and to try and dissect and take away more space from Ukraine, and spread, talk about how, we're basically waging a holy war against the Western degeneracy. And it's just, come on. I mean, um, yeah, and it's just the multiple the conclusion that I keep coming back to is that there are multiple viewpoints to everything, and I mean, there are basically two giant points that are hovering in my eyes. Um, is that one is that some things are so uncomfortable you don't want to say them, and that causes a lot of problems in the world. Like talking about immigration, to mention even a slight, to mention even a slight pushback against immigration, you kind of feel like you're a racist, and it's like, I'm not a racist. I'm just trying to reason through the argument. Yeah, that's one big problem, that you're very kindness, you're very empathy, you're very consideration, you're very I don't know what the word, openness. You're very guilt that you feel is just used against you, even if you making you know a, a somewhat reasonable and rational point. So I had to take a stop here. All right, so I'm back recording again. It's been 2 days, but I've been getting insomnia for some reason, so I've been pretty tired. But I thought, I really wanted to finish this recording and put it up. So for what it's worth. So yeah, I gotta get it back. I mean, I was totally thrown off what I was gonna say, so I'm gonna have to somehow get back to it. But yeah, I mean, since then I've seen this video today, actually, where there was this neurosurgeon, or former neurosurgeon, and this guy was talking about how it's a channel called I think it's Doogie and Boogie or something like that, which is, Boogie is his like dog's name, something silly. But anyway, this guy retired from being a neurosurgeon, and the reason is because he had an epiphany, right? Which is that the surgeries that he would do on people, and most of those were spine surgeries. He said most people don't know that neurosurgeons don't just work on the brain; they work also on the spine, and they work mostly on the spine, I think. And so he said, he had performed a lot of these surgeries, but something dawned upon him. He started talking to the patients, right? Something that you shouldn't do if you want to keep your job. Started talking to the patients, and he realized that they would get better or worse, depending on their lifestyle. So he found that people who ate low carb or vegan, people who exercised, who would do something to sweat, who would have family, who had families and friends, they would actually recover. And the surgery was totally irrelevant. Right? They didn't even need the surgery at that point. because the lifestyle choices would actually save them, so they didn't need the surgery. And so he realized that this terrible paradox, this terrible contradiction, that if he advised his patients to just live a healthy life, then they wouldn't need to go to the doctor. They wouldn't need to go to see him to do a surgery, because the problems would heal on their own. And if they didn't do those things that help, the surgery would do something for a while, right? But it would not last. The solution would not last, and sometimes it actually made things worse, or he couldn't help them at all because they were so dilapidated at that point. And so he figured out that the whole hospital system basically runs on generating sickness. That if you want to make money, you have to create the sick. The philosopher Mika Statter said the sick are created, and then the solution is given to them. To the solution to the problem that was artificially created in the first place. So it's this whole, it creates a kind of circle jerk, and this cycle. And so he realized that his job hinges on, it actually was good for him to tell patients to not be healthy, to not live a healthy lifestyle, because if they did, he would be out of a job. And that was a very acute observation, I think. But there's something he missed, which is that something he didn't talk about, which is that but the money that he was bringing in from the kind of fluke surgeries, that the kind of fake surgeries that didn't need to exist, from the artificially created problem, those actually founded the rest of the hospital too. And many of the patients in hospitals actually do need the surgeries and the procedures and the medicines that they receive, the care that they receive. So he failed to consider, which makes the situation even worse, even more evil and repugnant, that the money that he was bringing in actually funded the rest of the hospital system. And so it's not just a double problem, it's a triple problem. It's not just a relationship between him and his patients, it's a relationship between him, his patients, and the rest of the hospital, or the other patients too. So you actually have a kind of a tripartite circle of doom, where you have to make people sick, and if you make people sick, that will fund the hospital, which will then provide money to run the machines and buy the medicines and cover the overhead. That would actually go to necessary treatments, and treatments that are actually benevolent and good and necessary. Not things that could be fixed by just living a better lifestyle. So I failed to consider that, and that just one added dimension to add to this Doogie and Boogie guy, or whatever his name was. That the situation is basically worse than what he had imagined it to be. It's a whole systemic problem, and that's just something I wanted to add, because here again we could just return to, the shooter, the assassin of United Health, the CEO, because he's still at large. I mean, he's not large, but you know he's still afoot. He's not been caught. And I've actually actually didn't think he could generate this much positive reaction. I didn't think that would happen. The first time I saw his photo, I was like, I wonder if they could, if they could brand him as like a handsome assassin, you know. But I thought, no, that's crazy. And lo and behold, a day later, everybody was talking about him and how handsome he is and how much of a hero he is, and he has this. He actually had this on the shells of the gun, or the shells of the bullets. He actually had these words of what was that? Deny, delay, and depose, which is a reference to a book which was called Deny, Delay, and the third one wasn't. He changed the third item, but I don't remember what it was. But it's a book that was titled Deny, Delay, and something else. But basically, the book, the book was about the U.S. insurance system, and the U.S. insurance system is such that many necessities that people need are often not covered. Is what I've been told, what I've been hearing, and also that there's a fundamental problem that many people couldn't afford a $400 emergency, I think, because they just don't have any money. And if they lose their job, they lose their insurance, and they just pretty much screwed. There's no, they just don't get coverage. You can go to the ER, but there's no coverage. You can't, you don't get dental. You don't get all these things that you need if you don't have a job, or if your coverage is not good enough, if it's poor coverage. And so it became obvious then that this was a politically motivated assassination, and so that can lead us back to the topic of justice, of taking essentially taking matters into your own hand, being a vigilante. And with light is, would you pick up the death note and would you write in it? And I think lots of people would, and I think that this is an indication that people actually would if they had the balls to do it. And I guess one way that we can connect this to another problem is that we essentially live in a giant delusion. That people don't really appreciate just how much of a delusion we actually live in. That we think that somehow if somebody has a lot of money, then that's the way things ought to be, and we don't consider the background. We don't consider how many people could have been successful or not successful only because they got bullied in school, or something happened to them psychologically and it messed them up. And it's not so much that it's the intelligent people who are ahead, it's the intelligent people who have a certain predisposition to to be tough and to have a kind of psychology that has not been ruined. And so we live in this illusion, like we just assume that everything is sort of justified, even though it's a much more complicated story. That people get it's a race, and some people fucking sandpit opens up, a fucking hole opens up, and they fall in them. Somebody puts their foot out, and you know, balances them off their feet, and uh, somebody gets tickled, like when they shoot up the start gun, the bullet ends in somebody's brain. A bear runs through and eats somebody. A guy with no legs has to crawl. Just all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Uh, that it's not a fair race. Rat race isn't a fair race. A snare race isn't a fair race. Everybody, the people's, and this connects to, I guess, the neurodivergent problem, that people's differences are not appreciated to the degree that they should be appreciated. That the differences. This argument that I made before, that if a normal person makes $100,000, and if I make $100,000 as a neurodivergent person, the market sort of pretends that the same effort went into them, but we know that for me as a neurodivergent person, I had to have worked maybe 2, 3, 4 times as hard as the other person had to, but that difference is not made up for in the paycheck. And you might say, okay, that's a practical fact, but I'm not really suited with that answer. I'm not really suited with the practical answer, and with what is practical. That just suck it up. I mean, this is why this idea of capitalist realism that Mark Fisher talks about, that this idea that well, capitalism might not be ideal, but it's the best thing that we have. It's the least bad thing that we have, and that's the argument that Jordan Peterson made against Zizek in the debate. That, well, all right, Bucko, but well, okay, but it's human nature, man. That we are part of hierarchies, and capitalism is based on hierarchies, and everybody falls into place under the free market. It's a very nice kind of convenient picture of what reality actually is. Just wash your balls, man. Wash your balls. Wash your balls and go back to work. It's a very nice idea. It's convenient, but it's bullshit. And it's not good for you, because that it's basically a concession. On the side of the capitalists, on the side of the the kind of defenders of the status quo, the system. That that if you really think that this is the best we can do in a kind of realistic way, then you're just making a kind of pessimistic argument, right? So that if this is really the best we can do, then we really just ought to be antinatalist. But they're not gonna go that far. They're never gonna say they're never gonna go to that conclusion, because they're they're vehemently against it. These defenders of the system, they defend the system, they defend everything. It's all or nothing for them. But it's basically just an admission that if this is the best we can do, then fuck it. Then so that's another thought. And what else? I mean, it's again, we could just talk about I've seen this I've seen this kind of idea, philosophy idea of epistemic injustice, that that it basically talks about how that for example, something like that if you talk to the police and you don't appear as somebody who's trustworthy, then they're not gonna take your word seriously. And this she was talking about, the philosopher of this was talking about a case from England that there was somebody was attacked, and the guy was black, and he looked like he looked like he was the one who started the trouble because he was black, and probably in crappy clothing, and so they didn't take his word seriously, and I think that got him killed. And something similar happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. If you've seen the Dahmer documentary, or I don't know what that was, a kind of a fictionalized autobiography. That's exactly what happened with the police. That Dahmer was able to get away with what he was doing because he was collecting brown and black victims mostly, and so they just didn't care about it. And so this idea that the defenders of the system want to uphold that everything is fair, and if you have a problem you can go to the police, and that's what Jordan Peterson said to victims of sexual abuse, when a guy mentioned that women actually had it worse than men in lots of ways, and his glib response was, well, everybody had it bad, everybody, and so he mentioned that the other guy mentioned that because of the patriarchal system, the women had it, it was a difficulty for them because the patriarchy made it such that they couldn't talk to anyone about their own oppression. It wasn't taken seriously, and Peterson said, well, they could have gone to the police. And it's like, just a glib way of ignoring the problem, that this is what this philosopher calls epistemic injustice. That this would be a kind of testimonial injustice. So she has a couple of categories of this, like testimonial injustice and other stuff. But the point is that this neat picture that you can just apply the law and everything's gonna be okay is just a lie, because as much as we would like to think, we're not objective creatures, we're not rational creatures, and some people's word means more than other people's word, right? Like Elon Musk gets millions of people to listen to him, even if and not somebody else gets nobody to listen to him, even if what they say is the same, right? So I've been kind of obsessed with this idea that something can be ontologically the same but epistemologically not the same, that we don't see the world the same way, and the world is not the same for us, even if we try to pretend that it is by making laws and societal rules. The fact is, some people, like neurodivergent people, or will be ignored. They will not be taken seriously because they have stims, or they look funny, or they sound funny, and they'll be ignored. And this is the kind of theorizing that fucktards like Peterson, assholes, who probably should be written in some notebooks, to try to pretend that, oh, this is just a woke victim mentality. And it's like, what's your answer? I mean, his answer is go to the police, wash your balls and go to the police. If you get, if women are not taken seriously, if they're in danger of being abused because they're women, and they live in a patriarchal society, well, they can go to the police. Well, it's like try that in Afghanistan. They just redefine what abuse means, and then they can get away with it. Or they will just simply not take you. See, they will not apply the law. I mean, how many, the many, I mean, basically in schools, the law is almost never applied. Like, we all know about bullying, and we all know that bullying happens all the time everywhere, and even though it's basically illegal, it's not supposed to happen. It's nobody really cares and nobody really does anything about it. Everybody just sort of uh, accepts it as a kind of unwritten rule that bullying is a part of life. That some popular kids and the unpopular kids, and the unpopular kids get beaten up. You know, um, and that's so pervasive that it's a trope in movies and TV shows. Like there's a bully in The Simpsons. There's a bully in every comedy show, every comedy movie. There's always a bully, everywhere. Every TV show there's a bully. Breaking Bad, there was a bully. Yeah, there's a bully. The Game of Thrones, there was a bully. But so we just sort of inherently accept that bullying is part of life, and even though every part of bullying is illegal when you look at it, that physically abusing somebody is illegal. That would be assault. Verbally assaulting them, verbally abusing them is also illegal because that would be harassment. Touching girls without their consent, talking dirty to them when they don't want to be spoken to in that way. That's another one that definitely happens all the time, and that's obviously illegal. That would be sexual harassment, but of course it happens all the time. Peer-to-peer and also teacher-to-peer. Teachers often humiliate you, right? And much of the bullying takes place by teachers. That they humiliate you, and they. I mean, I've always thought that the fact that you can't, in many schools you can't, when you want to take a leak, you actually can't go out. You can't leave the class to go to the bathroom because you just can't. They tell you should have gone. Yeah, everybody knows the line, right? You should have gone during the break. Should have gone during the break. I need to piss now. But I always thought of it as a kind of sexual harassment or even sexual assault in a kind of indirect way of interfering with the. I mean, just think about this for a second. This is interfering with the bladder of a child. I mean, how is it not molestation? You can't touch their ass, so why can't you fuck with their? Why can't you fuck with their bladder? I mean, this is crazy. Why can't you fuck with the urinary tract? This is and all of this stuff is just generally accepted. Even though we have these laws, laws are just a way to pretend that. Laws are always a way to, like every accusation, that phrase, every accusation is a, what's the word? Confession. Every accusation is a confession. Well, it's just the same with laws and norms, that once you have to, establish the law, like the age of consent or something like that, then you just basically, you're basically just admitting that we're a bunch of, pedophilic animals, at least the men. When you make assault illegal, you're just admitting that we're a bunch of violent animals who need to be controlled. So you can run down the list all the way back to capitalism and say, all right, so then why the fuck bother then? If you know that the world is this bad, that it needs all this, it needs all this paddling and just bickering and patching up. Why not just forget about it? I mean, the conservatives are basically they basically just admit that the world sucks, and and they just make it worse, and then they expect us to have kids. I mean, Jordan Peterson. I just rewatched that with interview on purpose because this has been bugging me that the host asks him, well, what about ADHD students, students who need some kind of assistance to learn, they need extra time, who have learning disorder, basically. That's what he was talking about. And Peterson said, well, that sounds nice. Well, that sounds nice, but in practice, the world is a cruel place and nobody will wait for you, bucko. So therefore, fuck him. This cyclical argument that, well, the world is cruel, so fuck him. I guess. I mean, what are you even talking about? He says, well, it shouldn't be that way, maybe, but that's the way it is. Well, but who made it that way? Us. So if we made it that way, we can unmake it. And and that leads directly to the next point, which is about trans people, just because it's kind of popped into my head and it's relevant to the right-wing topic that the right-wingers are usually the types to be kind of biological determinists, that this is the way the world is, and we're male and we're female, and we have a kind of human nature, which means that we have to have capitalism because hierarchy or whatever. Which is a stupid argument in and of itself, because obviously in socialism they also had a hierarchy. It was even more of a hierarchy. So it's clear that we need to flatten the hierarchy a little bit to make it work. But anyway, and that's supposed to be capitalism, right? And it sort of worked, before it was radicalized, when it was, the so-called embedded capitalism of social democracy. But that's not what they want. That's not what the Petersonians want. They want this kind of free market bullshit. And anyway, so the right-wingers will usually be, biological determinists. This is the way the world is, and the leftists are usually the ones who are social determinists. They say that but the world can be, people can be melded and molded in all kinds of ways. And it's interesting that when it comes to something like trans people or LGBT people, the right wingers flip, right? So they will say something like, they're indoctrinating our children into LGBT, and it's like how so they turn from being biological determinists to social determinists, and they think that there are these evil teachers out there who want to convert your child into being trans for some reason, right? So the all all the biological determinism talk about how different races are different and we need to stick to our own, and capitalism is justified because it's part of human nature. All that goes away when it comes to LGBT people. Now it's not the social determinists. It's very, very stupid, paradox that I've noticed. So I think in seahorses it's the male that has kids. I was very interested when I learned that it's actually the males who have kids. The males. So the world is a lot more funky and weird than we would like to think, right? Pretending that we know when we don't know, right? Comprehending half of everything and think we have the full truth. We grasp half of everything and then we're convinced we know everything. We're convinced we know all of it, and that's another point, that in order to know something, you sort of have to know everything, right? Because I've come up with a kind of analogy, like if you look at one half of a snow globe, and you can only see half of it, but you know that there's another half there. You've seen it before or whatever. And then if you look at the snow, half of a snow globe, and you don't know that it has another half, you've never seen it before, right? Even though the event is the event is ontologically the same in the sense that it's the guy looking at half of a snow globe, but epistemologically, in terms of what he knows, it's different. It matters that it matters what background information he has, right? So it's not enough to just perceive half of the snow globe and say this is a full snow globe, because it could not be a full snow globe, and he has to know in advance that it is, in order to know that he's looking at half of it and not all, and that he's not looking at a snow globe that only half of it exists, only half of which exists, right? And so that's a kind of argument against this. Again, going into philosophy a little bit, this kind of correspondence theory that we see the word for what it is. That's what I've been attacking this whole tirade. That we look at the laws and we look at the people doing things, and we don't have the background information about who they are and what they've done, and whether this successful person is a neurodivergent person or not. That it took him 4 times as much work to get to that point. That some people who are poor and unsuccessful are so because they got molested and bullied and they have autism, and we just kind of cast them aside as, we don't see that. We just see them as kind of, well, they're the losers. They're probably just lazy or something. We inherently, I think, and this is biological. I'm willing to say, like, we inherently admire successful people. This is the point that Bukowski made, and that we admire anti-heroes, and that's something he predicted pretty well, because recently there's been a rise of anti-heroes, like from Breaking Bad to Game of Thrones to, I don't know, the Joker. I mean, there's all kinds of anti-heroes, or even the assassin. That we admire that person because he does what we want to do, but we're too afraid to do it. Right? That's why there was a game, a kind of flash game, where you could beat your boss and torture him, that sort of stuff. Even Stone Cold, from WWE or WWF back then, I don't know. Stone Cold said, the reason why they like me so much is, he was this kind of badass character of, he would beat his boss, he would beat up Vince McMahon, every time, and he would bully him, and the point of the story was that that he would beat up his boss, and everybody liked that, and he said himself that the reason why this is because that's the fundamental, the underlying desire, the fantasy that people actually have. They want to kick their boss in the face. Or from Fight Club, when the guy punched himself in the face. I made it look like it was the boss who did it. That was brilliant, Or Heisenberg. I mean, I admire Heisenberg in a way, because again, he's just kind of badass. It's he does what he wants. And yeah, there are victims, but there would be victims anyway. Like, I don't know. It's so now we're just going back to the antinatalism stuff that. I actually watched this video that came out. It's another thing that happened. Let me just check my recording a sec. You always want to make sure you're recording. Oh, we've been going for 37 minutes. Jesus Christ. Oh, well. Anyway, so this new interview with David Benatar dropped just yesterday. And I watched it, and I got pissed, and I commented, And this argument the antinatalists have against um, atheists, that we shouldn't press the big red button because, well, maybe the big red button goes berserk and it doesn't finish the job. I think this is all pointless because there is not going to be a big red button built. If there was one, I would like to press it. I think, at the very least, I would like to press it. The same way that I would like to write names, and I'm not too sure if I would. But again, this is just a matter of psychology. Aren't we just talking about psychology here? That we have some natural, counter power to push you away from doing destructive or self-destructive things. And maybe if you take that out, then we just look at pure logic, then that would be exactly the conclusion that we reach. That given certain premises, it's just a natural conclusion. It's a sound argument, right? The premises follow, the conclusion follows from the premises, and the premises are true. Then you get a sound argument. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm totally postmodernist. I don't believe that you can generate objectivity at all, because what is sound and not sound is already contingent on language, and language is already contingent on culture, and culture is already contingent on history. And come on, it's just this idea that you can see the word for what it is that bothers me. It's not true. I mean, Kant already said it. You cannot see the thing in itself. And in lots of ways, there's no thing in itself. So I return to the antinatalism in a bit, but just to mark it before I forget, because last recording I had some point, but I totally forgot what it was. Yeah, I mean, in case you're watching this and you're thinking, oh God, this guy has a lot of fucking thoughts, must be painful. Maybe it occurred to you that I'm kind of insane. Yes, I'm kind of insane. This is the only way I can. The reason why I talk like this is because, I have to be fluid. That's the only way I can connect the ideas, or I lose them. I don't remember them. I mean, I have some things written up, but some things that you just want to remember it and then connect it logically, and this is the only way I find to do. Anyway, so see, now I'm 2 digressions in, so I have to keep a mental map. So let's go 1 digression back. Let's go 1 nesting back, and I was talking about antinatalism, and then I was talking about. Oh no, I was talking about antinatalism, and then I branched into something else. God, I don't remember what the fuck I was talking about. Anyway, see, this doesn't work. I distracted myself again. Anyway, the point is, I'll find it somehow. The point is that these, oh yeah, it was realism. I was talking about metaphysics, and then antinatalism, that you really don't see what the word actually is. That if you ask me, like, are you an idealist? Do you think the word is only in the mind? Or are you a physicalist or a materialist? Do you think there's only stuff? And because the stuff is real, we can perceive it for what it is. Which one? And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like believing, like asking me if I have to choose between them. It's like asking me to choose between the moon and the sun, like they sort of work, everything sort of works together, right? That the moon reflects the sun back. The moon reflects sunlight, so we need everything back, everything at the same time, that I'm a realist in the sense that, yeah, I don't think the world is made up of mind. I feel like that's going too far. Can't see an argument for that, but I do also feel like that once we are in here, we kind of mess everything up. Once we are conscious, the objectivity is lost. So there's this, there are these philosophers who talk about who want to bring back realism um, to continental philosophy, because after Hegel and people like that, it sort of got ruined. That the world can actually be objective, and all this crazy metaphysics and analytic philosophers try to eliminate metaphysics, and pragmatists came in and they said, fuck it, we don't know anything about truth. And everybody tries to play the game, but anyway, the point is that I just don't think you can choose that. Oh, anyway, so yeah, these realists who are called speculative realists of Quentin Millesue and Graham Harman and people like that, who are like, well, I think it was Quentin Millesue's argument that that if you look before human beings, if you look at the kind of paleontological, the paleontology evidence base of, there were fossils before humans, and fossils were before humans, then it's a necessary conclusion that idealism is false, that the world is not simply an extension of mind. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, maybe the mind is, the mind kind of projected those, that somehow the mind could have still technically produced, those paleontological marks, in the mind backwards. But that somehow, God put it there. That's when I heard one kind of argument that, how does the religious person react to, paleontological findings, and he said, well, God put them there. But I obviously don't believe in any of that crap, so I'm just saying that I don't know, I feel like this is so highfalutin philosophy that there's just basically no point in talking about it. You can't reach a conclusion about it. You don't know what the world is made out of. You only know that it's made out of stuff, and we call it material. That's it. Chomsky says too that there's no mind and body problem. It's just nobody knows what the body is. Nobody knows what the matter is. It's just what we call the stuff of the world. So how can you make a distinction? He is vehemently against the postmodernism, that it's vehemently against anti-realism, that the mind doesn't perceive the world for what it is, that somehow there's a distinction between the mind and the rest of the body, and he thinks it's the same thing. The mind is not different from the body. It's just Spinoza said, the mind is the idea of the body. It's the same thing. Or it's not the same thing, but the mind is somehow contained or produced by the body, and that's all that it is. It's just the way the body kind of perceives itself, but it's not a different substance, and that would be called the substance dualism, and people who believe there's only one substance. The stuff, or mind. I guess I don't really know how to differentiate, because you can be a substance dualist, you can be a monist, but you can be a monist in terms of mind. You can be an idealist monist, and you can be a physicalist monist, I guess. But this is just tripping me up now. But you can see the problem, that it's just so confusing. It shouldn't be that confusing. So anyway, so my argument would be that yes, maybe the world does exist fundamentally, but once we're here, we kind of retroactively impose our own subconsciousness onto it and relativize and subjectivize it, right? That people don't like this word of relativity and postmodernism and subjectivity because they think it muddles everything up. But I think subjectivity is an important word. That relativity is an important word. Postmodernism is important because it shows us that we don't have objective tools to measure the world. And the argument that I've given before of the epistemic injustice shows that that we don't see the world the same way, that the rules, there are unwritten rules and rules that people don't follow, and we don't see that something can be ontologically the same but epistemologically different or phenomenologically different. So my main point is to be against realism, either scientific realism or no scientific realism. That I am a realist in the sense that the world exists. That would be a metaphysical realism, but I'm definitely an anti-realist in terms of what we can know, or morality too, metaethics too. I don't believe in objective morals. It's just bullshit. We only have our own desires, and if you want to call them morals, then you can. But there's just the tree falls on you, you died. That's just what happens. It's not like it was wrong for the tree to fall. Then why do you think that it's somehow wrong for you to cut the tree down or something? It just doesn't make any sense. It's just anthropomorphism. Moral realism is just anthropomorphism. That there is no objective moral facts. There's just the stuff of the world, and everything justifies itself by what it can do. And then we can apply intelligence. We can pull out our amendment, and we can say yes, we can. He says that we have the stupid world, we have the stupid brain, and then we have the smart brain, and we can apply. That he's very persistent and keen on this idea that the intellect and the dumb consciousness is not the same. That we have a working consciousness. That is different from just the sheer consciousness of being. That we can apply logic. But my problem is that once you get into these arguments of the challenges to objectivism and realism, it becomes really difficult to maintain that your logic is anything else but an extension of your desires. It might be a more formal desire, but it's still a desire. It's still I just said so. It's you can never really put down axioms that are not already assumed. That the point of an axiom is that you have to assume it. If you assume the axiom, then you can prove the axiom. But if you don't, if you don't have an axiom and what you have is an observation derived from experience, then you also don't have completion, because experience is subjective. So either you put down axioms independently of experience, you're rationalist, or you're a oh god, what's the word? I'm a little bit rusty on this. So you're either a rationalist or I don't remember the word. Yeah. You're either a rationalist or you're a person who believes that that empiricist. That you're a person who believes that the world is only that we can only have empirical knowledge and we can't have rational a priori knowledge. And it seems to me that in either case, if you have pure rationality, then you have to have axioms, and the axioms cannot be justified because they're axioms. And in the case of in the case of empiricism, then your experience is never complete. It's not objective, and it's not complete. It's always you cannot garner some kind of objectivity from experience. So and this is just my skepticism that this idea that the world is finally unknowable. The world is finally unknowable. We may not know the fundamental mechanism of the world. All we can do is describe what we see, what we feel, what we can experience, but we cannot get a perfectly complete structure, a system that will explain everything that many philosophers and scientists have sought over the years. with the years, decades, centuries. There is no theory of everything. Theory of everything will, would have to include the writing of the the theory of everything would have to include the very performance of the writing itself, and it can't do that. Otherwise, it's not complete. Yeah. So I guess that should be enough. I already brain molested everybody. So let's just go back to antinatalism. So what's my problem? I mean, my problem with Benatar is I thought he was a real neat guy, but the more I think about him, the less I want to think about him these days, because he wants to. He seems to be running some kind of support for Israel, which is like, I mean, just the other day, Amnesty International has come down and said that this is a genocide. I mean, come on. I mean, Israel bombs, food trucks where aid workers. There's nothing but aid workers. It bombs it. Uh, it just. I mean, the very fact that Palestinians are treated like second-class citizens should be enough to say like, oh Jesus Christ. I mean, all you have to do is like watch. You don't even have to be educated. All you have to do is watch like iShowSpeed talking about Palestine. Because iShowSpeed has this this famous streamer. I sometimes watch out of guilty pleasure sometimes, and he goes on Omegle or whatever, and meets Israelis, and he always says free Palestine, and the Israelis are never happy about that. So that gives you a look into how Israelis look at Palestinians, how they treat them, how they see them, the subhuman monsters. They obviously don't see each other as brother and sister, And if you want to say like, oh, but this Palestine is, the Palestinians are violent. I mean, do you know some? Let me tell you something about Palestine, and I will get back to antinatalism. The median age of Palestinians is 19. The median age of Israelis is 27. If I'm correct, that's about a 50% difference, right? It's about a 50% difference. So at the very least, so what this basically is, and this breaks my heart really, what this basically is the siblings. There's the older sibling and the younger sibling. At the very least, all things being equal, the older sibling should have 50% more responsibility than the younger sibling. I would argue, unless it's neurodivergent, but maybe Israel is retarded. I don't know. Again, and we can go back into the, if it was okay to shoot the CEO of a insurance company who probably murdered a bunch of people because they denied them insurance, would it be okay to shoot Netanyahu in the head? And that's something I saw. It's difficult to navigate these landscapes because you don't want to get deleted. But again, if I was light, I would stop. I think I would just kill everyone. I would be a dangerous fucker. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's just anyway. So back to the. So yeah, I mean that's about Israel. I mean you don't even need to know much. I don't, but it's like, I'm like a rat. I'm like a rat or a cat or a bug or I don't like to get into the pot. I like to stay on the sidelines and look in, kind of eat, what fucking, the breadcrumbs I can find. Because that seems to me that that's enough. An outside analysis is enough. Sometimes all you have to do is look at, just 2 seconds of a movie and you understand what it is. I'm pretty big on that idea that you don't really need the whole analysis on why you don't like Donald Trump. It's enough to just look at his fucking disgusting painted face. I mean, the guy couldn't be real for 5 seconds. He needs to paint his face. He needs to, The way he poses when he takes a photo, it's a bright smile and the thumbs up. The way he dances, it's all pre-engineered. He has a set of moves. He's like a fucking Mortal Kombat character or a Tekken character or whatever the fuck. You know, you equip him, and it's like how could you possibly look up to somebody like this? I mean, do you know that Trump is a rapist? I mean, he has been convicted in a civil court of rape. What is essentially rape, finger raping. You know, he's been accused of. His company has been, I think, was even found guilty of racial discrimination. Some black families, you know, questioning the ethnicity of Obama, where he was born. Same thing with Kamala. You know, maybe she wasn't born here. I mean, just this racism. You know, one day, you know, and this is my big example. Nobody can tell me this isn't right. Okay. Do you know that in 2016, if you're old enough, I'm old enough, I was there. You know, I was actually cheering for him at that time because I was a young, edgy kid. And I just thought it was funny. Just funny, you know. Because Hillary sucked, and frankly, I still have the same opinion because Hillary sucks. Who the fuck would want Hillary Clinton to win? You know, it's just, that bitch is definitely soulless, right? Everybody agrees about that. Still recording. I'm just now getting into it, and it's been an hour. Anyway, so yeah, so I thought it was funny at the time, but you know, it's okay. Oh yeah, the example that, you know, that in 2016, in the run-up to the 2016 elections, Trump was actually pro-LGBT. Not making this up. He was running around with a flag. He actually said in a speech, "I will fight for the rights of LGBT individuals." And he got an applause. That's the big fucking thing. He got an applause for it from the Republican crowd. Now imagine that today. Would never happen. He would never support the LGBT people today. You know, what gives? Why this? You know, the abrupt change? Well, of course, because the Republicans have shifted to the right and they no longer support LGBT people at all. They hate them now. You know, even more so than before. Like, and so Trump magically, you know, he even said that, like, would you like let Caitlyn Jenner into the female bedroom? And he said, yeah. And then, you know, a couple of years later, he comes out, you know, talking about the LGBT agenda and how we're gonna destroy it. And I mean, the guy clearly just doesn't have much of a soul. I mean, I just fuck. You know, I feel like the only thing I've seen from him where he's consistent is like abortion. And you know, he sort of said like, yeah, I'm kind of a conservative. You know, I favor traditional marriage, and he did say that many years ago too. I think that, like, he probably always was a kind of conservative. But he's, you know, he's clearly just, he probably has some inkling of a soul somewhere, but it's not enough to, you know, to keep him on foot. You know, he just goes anywhere he likes. Otherwise, you know, just baffling. I mean, how could you? This is a billionaire, and he sold himself as if he was the friend of the people, and 80 million people or so bought it. Incredible. And you know, I've heard this argument that, well, yes, Trump will fuck everyone, but at least in terms of foreign policy, he will be, you know, more dovish than Biden would be, and maybe that's true. But you know, I think he wants, you know, that just because you want peace, it's an argument from Zizek too, that, yeah, of course, Russia wants peace. I mean, they want to, you know, peace is good. They don't have to fight. But they want the peace on condition that they take territory from Ukraine. You know, of course, Israel wants peace too. Then they don't want the victims to fight back. That would be terrible. So would they want peace? But you have to consider the other side, that they don't want to give. They don't want to just stand on their, get down on their knee and suck the dick. They don't want to just let this foreign country, even if they're caught up in a proxy war, they don't want this foreign country to come in, rape them, murder a bunch of their people, rape them, destroy their buildings, and you know, detach some territory and then leave. I mean, come on, that we don't want that. You can possibly feel like you're not a cock at that point if you want to fight back. So maybe like again, this utilitarian argument that we want world peace. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't have world peace. Maybe we should have world war, because the peace comes at the price of the victims. For fuck's sake. And it's not fair. And again, there's just basically no solution to this. Because you obviously don't want to start. I'm not saying I would like a world war. I obviously wouldn't. That would be disgustingly bad. But I'm just saying that if we have world peace, then that just comes at a price. Comes at the price of the victims. It comes at the price of everyone who keeps the gears going because they have no choice. The 50 million slaves that exist in the world, more than ever before. All the starving children who die every day, thousands and millions every year, still die of preventable causes. Maybe if there was a world war and everybody was nuked, then at least they wouldn't be dying every year, because they'd already be dead, or they wouldn't be born. So that's the hard thing of the MLS thing, that if you have things functioning, they always function at the cost of something else. They function at the cost of victims. And so I tend to side with the victims unconditionally, and think like, okay, so if peace means we have to fuck you people, then I don't want to do it. Yeah, I've been having this thought that I will get back to antinatalism. That we should just be all honest for a second and let the world, like all the bars are down, you can do anything you like. There's probably some movie about that somewhere. Squid Game kind of thing. That's not what I mean, really. It's not Squid Game. It's just, where it's kind of Squid Game that, you can just do whatever you like to get your way. Which is just a brilliant metaphor for the way the economy works. It's just, I really just love Squid Game. I really love Squid Game. I really think they nailed the fuck out of the modern economy and the way it works. That people have to murder each other and exploit each other. And don't tell me that's not the way it works, because that's how the economy works. The losers lose, the winners win. The only way you can, sell at the top is if somebody else buys at the top. It's just the way it works. We're not all rising. It's just not true. There are many people who are ground up. Anyway, so that I've had this kind of fantasy, which should, I think, remain a fantasy. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. That I wish that somehow everything would just be honest for 5 seconds, and the slaves would be liberated, and they would fucking kill their owners, and everybody would just do whatever they wanted, rape, kill, torment, and then the world would explode and end. That would be the natural, and everything would explode. People would bomb each other. There would be no consequences of nuclear war. They would just people would shoot each other. That's the reality, isn't it? That's the reality. That's what would happen. All these tight-knit communities, maybe some of them would be tight-knit, but the others wouldn't be, and they would come for you. Carlin has a good bit about this, that imagine the prisons were shut down, and all the little amenities were taken away. The electricity was down, everything was down. The prisoners would escape because the gate system wouldn't work. Yeah, everything was permitted now because there was no, the police couldn't function. Firefighters couldn't function, the hospitals couldn't function, people would die, people would get raped, tortured, stolen from. That's the reality, isn't it? It wouldn't be pretty, would it? And those communities who would survive because they're really tight knit, like the Amish or something, well, they can only do that at the price of being really fucking stupid, right? Or at the price, like it reminds me of, in South Africa they have this Orania thing, I think it's called, where it's like a township town of like 1,000 souls, and it's just white people, Dutch. Um, I think they have some fucking name, but it's basically just white people in South Africa, and people are like I saw a video where snarky racists in the comments were like, ha, I wonder why this town is, and it's really like, it's really safe, it's a nice safe town, unlike the rest of South Africa, which is basically a shithole, let's face it. uh, and the snarky idiots were like, ha, I wonder why. Obviously the implication being that it's because they're white. And it's like, all you have to do is just look at the history for 5 seconds. All I had to do is go and look at the Wikipedia. And what do you see? You see that the very space, the very land that the town was built on was itself colonized by these whites. Back in. So what had happened is back in the apartheid, they actually forced a bunch of black families who had lived there to move somewhere else. Now they were given another house, but they were driven away from that place, from that land that they now occupy. So they're basically occupiers of land that belonged to black residents from the 90s. So they were displaced. That's the word. And that's the first thing, is that's just it's very ironic. That's just following the white person protocol, the white people protocol of colonize and displace first. Always build what you have on the backs of other people. And that bit is never mentioned by the racists, that yes, we might be kind of smart and we've done all these amazing things as a race, so-called race. And I would be willing to. I'm perfectly happy to concede that Europe is the most humane place in the world. I mean, it's by far, and it's filled with white people. It's because of white people. I know that. But you have to look at the past. You have to look at the history. You have to look at the context. That this is only possible on the cheap labor that we have elsewhere. It's only possible on the international slavery that still exists. It's only possible by spending, it's only possible by expending a bunch of resources that cause climate change or exacerbate climate change. I mean, you have to look at it per capita. Per capita, obviously, the European countries are one of the worst, must be one of the worst, the polluters, So the victory that we gain, we always gain on the backs of other people. Sometimes we can work together, but usually, if not always, it implies the subjugation of somebody, right? And that's why we have to keep insisting on being on the left, that we have to be progressives, even if we don't believe in utopian ideals. We cannot, the right-wing story that white people are so much special and, race realism, it's just bullshit. It's just a shitty story. So we have to insist on our own, The number one thing to insist on is social determinacy, that the world is determined by social factors. Like one more example, that if you look at autism, for example, and you say, well, autism is objective. Actually, autism is objective. It's a fact. Well, yes, and I agree. I don't like this game where people try to play it down and pretend it's not there and it doesn't matter. My psychiatrist does that too. Well, these are just words, The psychologist tells me, the psychiatrist tells me these are just words, and then gives me a bunch of drugs. I mean, come on, you know. Obviously, the underlying condition is real. It has biological basis. Nobody would deny that. Um, uh, it has neurological basis, but it doesn't answer the question, where does it come from? That or that it or I don't know where it comes from, but the the, the, the problem is that the problem is that autism is basically just the sum total of its symptoms. That's what autism is. It doesn't have anything else other than the way it makes you behave. Um, if it does, then it's irrelevant. If it has anything else, then it's irrelevant. Like if it makes your left foot a little bit bigger or something, it's like it does. Who cares? Autism is basically exhausted by the behaviors that it causes. And if that's the case, that's socially conditioned, right? If you just list autistic traits like stimming, being avoiding eye contact, being anxious around people, not being able to open up, mutism, selective mutism. These are major traits of autism. And I know some people's autism is more severe, and there's not much you can do about that. But actually, I think there's probably a lot you can do about that too. But the point is that it's not a quantitative point. I'm just saying that I'm not saying to what degree you can change it. I'm just making the logical point, the deduction that that how you're treated in the world will determine how you act. So if stimming is a way to relieve stress, if you relieve your stress, or if society helps you relieve your stress, then you will stim less. If people look at you kindly and deal with you kindly, then you will be more ready to make eye contact, because you don't have to be afraid of the person that you're looking at. You don't have to be as anxious and mute, because you can talk, because you won't be desecrated by the people around you. And that's what we'll probably never achieve. The neurodivergent prosecution will never end. People just always look down. There's two types of people in the world: people who are normal and people who aren't normal. The people who are normal don't like it when you make that statement. That's precisely because they know it's true, and they know it's uncomfortable. They know that they mistreat people who are not normal. And that's why you could object to, these euphemisms of neurodivergent. I think it would be better to call us retarded, and just skip all the theatrics and just admit that we're basically retarded. And maybe it's where it's based to be retarded. It's cool to be retarded, but but don't pretend. Don't try to dress up the truth with pretty words just to keep discriminating against us anyway. Which is what happens, and it always happens, and people do it unconsciously, using the so-called microaggressions, right? It's a very cringe term, I know, but the way people treat you when you're autistic is just not the same, because you don't give them what they want. They won't give you what you want. They will treat you, will look at you a little bit different. They will, I don't see any way that will change. Okay, so finally I go back to antinatalism. Fine. And it's getting late, and I've said earlier that there's a homeless encampment somewhere behind me, so maybe I really ought to wrap up before they hear me, because it's a bit too quiet. But just antinatalism. The reason why I don't like Benatar is because he's a pussy. He's a vagina. He's a coward. He's basically guilty of this liberal ideology that people like Steven Pinker are guilty of. That we can't do anything, we just have to follow the law because that's, he would never say he would kill somebody, right? You could never get him to admit that he would kill somebody because it's illegal and you're not allowed to do it. So he just falls into this liberal ideology that whatever is the law is good, and there's nothing you can do to change that. As if civil war is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, he said, that if we made procreation illegal, then that would cause a civil war. It's like, yeah, like the civil war between the North and the South, to liberate slaves. I mean, you're not gonna fight that war. You're not gonna wage that war, fuckhead. I mean, he's just so. Emendem is right in calling him glib. That this. He diagnosed the problem perfectly with Benatar. This over reliance on politeness and academic language. He just says his little nice words, and he's kind of a smart guy and he's kind of a polite guy. As Trump would say, I guess. But he's useless. He wrote a book on a problem, but he's not willing to press a button to solve the problem that he spent most of his life complaining about. He would not press the button. He would let the natalists win. He said that I'm not mischaracterizing him. He said that in an interview. On interview on Nephilism, and it's just really a useless discussion, completely pointless. Just three people who don't like Nephilism, who just want to be anti-natalist, which doesn't accomplish anything, basically. I mean, to be an anti-natalist, all you have to do is do nothing. All you have to do is don't procreate, and you're an anti-natalist. And you tell other people not to procreate. Okay, so what? I mean, that doesn't fix much. I'm sorry. Just it's like saying, it's like almost like falling into the Jordan Petersonian ideology of wash your balls. That's the equivalent of it. You have to, if you want to fix the problem, then you have to do something to fix the problem. And I don't think this is going to happen. That's where I diverge from Emendem. So I'm not just a supporter of, I'm not just a blind foot soldier for Emendem or Nephilism. I'm just using the words to get views. I admit it. I'm an individualist. If you don't know that, then you don't deserve to watch this channel. I made it clear that I follow people like Dazai and Mika Statter and Bukowski and Carlin. I made it clear that I'm an individualist. Why? Because I don't like society, and I don't think I am the slave of anybody, and I certainly don't think I'm the slave of some abstraction. You don't have to be. You have to make the decision. Are you gonna be a slave to an abstraction, or are you gonna make the abstraction be a slave to you? Are you gonna do the bidding of some word, of some ideology, or are you gonna make it do your bidding? That's a decision that you have to make. And I just think people who like analytic philosophy, like a lot of people in the AM community, put too much emphasis on words. They think words are somehow divine, and if you get caught in some, semantic problem or contradiction, then that means somehow there's something wrong with your logic. When in reality, it's just the confusion of words. And there was already attempts to get out of the confusion of words. It's called pragmatism. It's called Wittgenstein. But the fact is, we can't get out of our words, and we're trapped in the words. But we shouldn't pretend to be slaves. Like, you don't have to be a slave to a spook. You don't have to be a slave to an abstraction. It's what words basically are propaganda terms. Propaganda terms. That's give name to a certain predilection or idea, like pessimism. Antinatalism is clearly, the way it's being applied is clearly just a catch-all term for pessimists. Nobody uses it like I think it's wrong to procreate. That's nobody actually does that. They have more, they have more they have more problems. They hold more grudges than just procreation. They don't like the society around them. They don't like the brutality of society. Then that's no antinatalist like society either. So it's clearly just a kind of catch-all terms. They have other I'm not finding the word. Grudges. They have other grudges. So all this, hyper fixating on the definitions of words is just pointless. And being married to a certain normative theory is pointless. So, oh, but if you're utilitarian, then you can blow up the world. But if you're a rights theorist, then you can't. And it's like, fuck you. I mean, so what you're basically saying is, I don't have the right to kill, but the person who procreates, if I don't kill, that they have the right to kill, right? So if I press the button, then nobody will kill anymore. But if I don't press the button, then many people will kill. And by just procreating, they will kill their offspring because they will die. They will sentence them. Giving life is giving birth is giving death. That's another phrase from Emendum, right? Or a kind of ethicist, antinatalist phrase, and that's why antinatalists run up against the wall. Is how can you believe that, but at the same time not press the button if it was in front of you? But on some other level, it doesn't matter because there will not be a button. I'm sorry, there will not be a button. So what are we to do? I really think there's nothing to do other than be a jester and make fun of the world and see it burn. So in the end, I'm a Carlinian. I made that clear before. I'm a Carlinian jester. I think what you should do. You bought a ticket to the shit show and you got the front seat. Don't we have to. The only way to save humanity is by giving up on the idea. You can't save it. You can't have utopian ideas that will actually work. Like Emendum's optimism about dropping birth rates is completely ignorant of variables like realism in international relations. That countries will never, this idea that somehow countries will come together to blow up the world or to blow up the world. That's his idea. That will never happen because it breaks the principle of realism. The countries only care about themselves and they will not jeopardize they will not destroy themselves to save other countries. You're basically asking China and North Korea and Afghanistan or the United States to kill themselves, and that's just insane. That's like saying being invaded and doing nothing about it. It's just never gonna happen. It's completely delusional. If it does happen, it's so far away from what we are now that there's basically no point in talking about it. That can only exist in a post. It will essentially require a communist utopia, which I don't think will happen. And again, we can talk about it. It's just the fundamental contradiction that runs through Emendum. Emendum's optimism is that he is a pessimist, but he sees optimistic trends. But if he sees optimistic trends, then why bother being a pessimist? If his grand utopia will be one day achieved, then we might as well just keep living at that point. It just doesn't make any sense to be the bearer of bad news, to be the prophet for doom and fatalism, but then imagine some utopian future where everybody will set their differences aside. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not theoretically it's possible. It's not a contradiction, but I'm just saying that realistically it's a contradiction. It's a kind of performative contradiction that you're the prophet of doom, and then you also imagine this utopian future. It doesn't make any sense. Those are two completely opposing intuitions and poles. I mean, just read John Gray. Here Benatar is correct that any utopian attempt will just be turned into a dystopia. That with the rise of technology, destruction also rises. That the word genocide was introduced in the 20th century. It's a fact, by the way. So that should give you an idea about the so-called progress we're going through. If there was really progress, then why is it that the worst atrocities took place in 2,000 years after, probably 12,000 years after civilization began. So it took 12,000 years of civilization or something like that for the worst to happen, and somehow that's called progress. And it's ridiculous to call this progress. It's only progress in the way that Steven Pinker describes it, that per capita it's progress, but in total it's not. Even though per capita people are better off, in total, in absolute terms, they're worse off. There are more slaves than ever before. There are more victims of war and more victims of violence than maybe not ever before, because the previous century was worse. But if you go back long enough, then that will be true, and it can be worse. It can only get worse from now, because the population will increase and technology will increase, and that will just produce all you have to do is add those up, and what you get in the end is a giant catastrophe, worse than we've ever seen before. I mean, I think one fundamental reason to not procreate humans is that they might one day colonize other planets and other galaxies, and that would just multiply. But we just multiply the problem by factors of 100,000. I don't know. Exponentially, it will make it worse. So I think that's one utilitarian reason not to procreate. But I think you can't really separate the wheat from the chaff. So you can't really pretend. I think many of us, the reason why we don't want to have kids is because we don't want to see our own kids suffer. I think we have to admit that. And even though we like to pretend that, no, we're doing it for logic, we're probably really just doing it because we don't want to be responsible for the suffering of our own child. And we don't justify it logically, we justify it emotionally. And I admit to that. Even if there was some calculation, some utilitarian calculation where having kids would be a good idea, which I don't think is true, just because of how dangerous humans are, I wouldn't do it personally. I would admit to being a hypocrite. The same way I'm a hypocrite for not being vegan, the same way I'm a hypocrite for not giving enough money. I mean, it's okay to be a hypocrite. Everybody's a hypocrite. But you just need to do your best, and you can't do any better than your best. Doesn't matter what somebody says. So another thing that I've seen is this idea that that maybe it will be possible to engineer a kind of fake dream where it will feel like an eternity. It will feel like 1,000 years in the dream, even though in real life it was only 10 minutes. And in this kind of technology ever becomes possible, then again, that just would be it would just exponentially increase suffering to huge levels. Sadistic people would pay, to I don't know, to put animals in these dreams, to put humans in these dreams that could last for a million years. Right? Lots of people talk about how I just seen in Korra, this website Quora, where people kind of ask questions and get answers. Quora, and somebody said, they had a dream where they lived for they had a dream where they lived for, I don't know, 10 years, 100 years, and it was only one night. It was only maybe a few hours of a dream. And somebody said, somebody, my grandmother, my grandfather, somebody had a dream where they lived 1,000 years, and it was only a night, maybe fucking 10 minutes. So, I'm just saying that with biotechnology, AI, and other new technologies, it will be possible to create the kinds and quantities of suffering never before seen. And I just don't know why we'd want to risk another Holocaust. That maybe there is something wrong in following a utilitarian approach, because if the utilitarian approach means that there will one day be another Holocaust, then fuck it. God, I just got up. I've been sitting here for like, I think 2 hours, an hour and a half. Okay, hope it's not freezing, otherwise they chop my leg off for what do you call that crap, where your limbs get screwed up? Frostbite. I have a little bit of I have OCD thoughts about frostbite. What if I get it, But I don't think it's freezing. Anyway, this was obviously a very long video, and I'm sorry for that. And to anyone who's still listening, I commend you. I wanted to commend you even before I started. I thought, because this will be a long video, I thought. And, if you're there and you're listening to this, I just want to say, do something useful with your life. That would be the message. You're obviously very intelligent if you're still listening to this. And very tough, because otherwise you couldn't watch all this intellectual stuff with this annoying guy, So I would just advise you to do something useful. Don't just sit around. And if you do something, then maybe good things will come to you. Good things will come to you if you do something. I believe that. I think passivity is not really winning. It's not really doing anything. I mean, at the very least, you should open your mouth and criticize some people, call them assholes. And then be passive, But first, do your job. Do something useful. And then good things will come to you. As Mikkelstadt said, through activity to peace.